let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let me.
When hitch, when hitch, when hitch, when hitch, when hitch.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and today a very special day as we get into a very deep and down and dirty hedge analysis. It's going to be a very lengthy video, perhaps, and talking about some long-term ideas as well as some short-term ideas. And because it is hedge day, I do want to remind myself to remind the people out there that if you do have ears that are easily offended, or ears that or eyes that also don't like easily offensive price action, well, this would be the time to turn off. That means you, Carl. That means you, Mr. Martins. Mommy is watching, and she is not going to be happy with this one because we actually do have the community guidelines on. So all jokes aside, let's actually get into it right now. I want to waste no time, but I would like to wish you the best, and the happiest to everyone out there, even if you are not technically allowed in this video, because it quite literally is going to be age restricted, I suppose. So with that said, let's get in a live stream right on over here and start off with the Bitcoin, or sorry, not Bitcoin, but the Krown trading application, which has been reskinned and re-beautified and is now available for your free taking at app.crowntrading.net. And what do we see here? Well, a lot of things are staring us right in the fucking face. Bitcoin dominance more or less steady. Total market cap obviously going down. The fear and greed index has absolutely plummeted from 33 to all the way to 17. And what do we see right on over here? Open interest also crumbling after yesterday going up a little bit, leading up into that next major area that we were looking for a potential fake out on, which is actually kind of happening, or I guess getting even more follow through right now. So with that said, and what's up, JB mate? Good to meet you, man. Good to have you in here. And let's get into the actual price action right on over here in good old Bit Mexico. And let's talk about this. So I want to first address this point. A lot of people seem to really get this, but for the few people who this maybe was not clear for, and perhaps that's my fault, as maybe sometimes I take a little bit of shortcuts with explaining myself. But when I talk about weekend price action being contrary to the week's direction, what I mean is the general trend, which of course, as of the last couple of weeks, was down. Remember, the bias was to the downside as long as Bitcoin was below 9,600. As soon as it broke it, what was it, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, right on over here. This was the 25th of February. So yeah, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks now. Yeah, exactly. That was what made us no longer bullish, but also bearish. And what happens after that? Well, we get some nice fall through to the downside, pops up over the weekend. And this is exactly what I mean by weekend price action usually being fuckery. We put in but Bitcoin put in a nice sunny triangle right on over here. We spoke about how that was likely to get the move to the upside and then quickly be shut down to the downside, as that's typically what you see, because that would have actually been a major break, a major breach in actually making Bitcoin making the bias, at least for myself on Bitcoin, back to bullish, back above 9,200 if we could get a higher time frame closure above there. That is exactly what I meant by weekend fuckery, and we got exactly that, actually. So looking at it right on over here, the fall through that we saw over the weekend, I do think that this is a little bit of, pretty damn intense, to be fair, but at the end of the day, it's still in line with the overall macro trend, and that is what I mean. On weekend price action, there has not been a single example of weekend reversals that are contrary to the overall macro direction, or not even macro direction, but just the trending direction for like the higher time frames, essentially daily, weekly, right on over there. Since CMEs have debuted in December 2017. There might be one or two examples that I might be wrong on, but I believe I've gone through just about every one of them, and and pretty much all potential reversals that were had on a weekend that were contrary to the macro direction were not sustained, had no follow through. This one obviously on the same side as the macro direction, not necessarily macro direction, but the daily direction right on over here. And now weekly as well, and getting that follow through. So let's pick up where we left off yesterday. And yesterday I was looking at price action to come back down to the 8,500-ish level. We did, and we actually didn't even really bounce there, except for on the very low time frames, like an hourly. Let's see, did we have any sort of a bouncy bounce action right here? No, not really. So I was completely wrong about that. We did head down to the next level of support right around 8150-ish region. I did say that there was going to be likely be at the very least a short-term time frame bounce there. We got that from 8150 81.50 all the way to 83.50. So a nice $200 move right there. And then curls back down over again. And what do you know? We see traditional markets doing the exact same thing. And we also do see that Japan, which has already traded for the day, has closed down 5% while US futures are also trading down 5%, I believe, as of a little bit earlier. I haven't checked it in the last couple hours, but I'd imagine it's probably around the same thing. So what does that mean? Well, it means we have the whole fucking hedge discussion to go on right now. And with that said, I do think that traditional markets are probably going to open up lower today. Or sorry, it's like, wow, great fucking one, Krown. No, I do think that traditional markets are going to work their way lower, and I do think that we are going to see that 275 to 265-ish region overall. What does that mean for Bitcoin? Well, as we've been saying for Bitcoin, the major areas to the downside are still very well may be all of these especially the major moving averages on the weekly. We did hit all the way down to the 89 exponential moving average, which I did say was 7,500-ish region. Sorry, we didn't necessarily get all the way down there. We got down to about 7,700-ish region. Now playing out a little bit of a bouncy bounce. And I do think that this bounce is probably going to take its time within this region. Overall, as far as the lower timeframes go, I do think that we are a little bit aggressive to the downside here. But the thing is that we still aren't even printing any sort of bullish divergence, even on like a 4 hour. So does this have more low to go? Probably yes. There is probably going to be another swipe to the downside. Probably, I would imagine, as soon as U.S. markets open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time, we are very likely to see this have further continuation, and at least try lower. Now, I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin has the momentum to break below like that 7,600-ish number right here, right now. I do think that Bitcoin's probably going to try again lower, get rejected from going lower, and then we'll play out another short-term, medium-term time frame bounce. Overall, though, the bias is still actually on more downside from my part. I did say yesterday and for the week prior that I do think that overall what Bitcoin's doing here is going through a long-form accumulation, essentially, and we're probably going to base out somewhere in like the mid to low 7,000s, of which we kind of reached down into earlier this morning. But I do still think that there's a little bit more to go. All momentum oscillators on the weekly are absolutely fucking cooked. We do see that weekly Stokes crossing back down. Weekly RSI is below the zone, which changes my bias from bullish to bearish, obviously, as of last week, but also more importantly below the exponential on this area right around here as well. And I do look at the weekly RSIs likely to kind of base out where we saw prior in what was this, like middle of November of 2019. And I do think that we're probably going to curl around longer term like this. If you see something like that, maybe price action gets brought down to like low 7,000 or something like that again, I would look at that as a major opportunity long term, or at the very least for a medium time frame bounce, probably back up to probably looking at $1,000 move plus from that region. But this is going to take a long time, and this is why I do think that the like eternal conversations of MoonBoys and DoomBoys always looking for price action to go like up a fucking 1,000% in a day or down 1,000% in a day, although we can't go $1,000 in a day apparently, is very misguided. And that's why this channel has always been focused on traders, and more or less the ebbs and flows of the market takes its time. And I think that that's what Bitcoin's going to be doing here. We're probably going to take our time. I don't think that there's going to be any sort of like moonshot into halving or anything like that. I don't think that even fucking matters, to be quite honest with you. As far as trading goes, long term, yeah, it's great. It's cool. But of course, all of you have known that information since the dawn of time, essentially. And that means that you can assume that everyone else has the same information because why the fuck not? It's not like it's behind a paywall or anything like that. So with that said, I do want to say that overall, I do think that Bitcoin's going to come a little bit lower here as far as the macro goes. The lower term timeframes, though, is a lot more tricky because I really wouldn't be even looking for like a short term or medium term timeframe bounce until we get bullish divergence on a 4 hour. Here's the thing, though. On our lower timeframes, we are starting to get to some pretty hefty areas with regards to historical volatility percentile. We are printing pretty red shit going on right on over here. That's a very technical term, by the way. And what do you know? This is exactly what we typically see on nice, short-term turning points. So, do I think that Bitcoin's going to probably come back down, swipe a little bit lower, maybe put in some divergence, and then play out a nice bounce? Most likely, yes. And then it's going to just slowly but surely, work its way forwards over this next week. And I do think, again, that that Bitcoin ultimately will go lower. We are going to see, of course, the 12-hour Stokes take its hold. We spoke about this yesterday. As easy as it sounds and as nasty as it sounds, as long as these things are down, I am overall bearish. We are breaking well below the bullish control zone right here, right now, and will be confirmed in the next 4 hours or so, 4 hours and 20 minutes if you want to get super exact with that. So I do think that overall, again, probably have some more downside here overall. But the one good thing is that we actually could be in the midst of creating some bullish divergence on the 12-hour if Bitcoin can, put in something resembling like a local low right here. So is it likely that we come back down, maybe test around the low of today, and then pump back up, to close right around 8,000 or above 8,000? That would be my next big indication that we are going to, play out a little bit of a short-term, medium-term time frame bounce, maybe work our way back up to about 8,400-ish region. I'm sure that everyone and their goddamn mother is going to be talking about a fucking gap on CMEs. Well, the funny thing about a gap like this is that's a runaway gap, and that means that it's unlikely to be filled anytime soon. And and more importantly, we have a very easy and natural way to kind of be looking at this right here. As long as Bitcoin's below about 8,450, and we do see spot and CMEs trading about at parity right now, within about $20, which is pretty much parity as far as I'm concerned, especially when yesterday we were looking at like $50, and a couple weeks prior to that we were looking at $100+ as long as we're below about 8,450, 8,500ish region, I'm not really looking for any sort of a gap to be filled back up to a little bit above 9,000 actually. So these things can take their time, and there's certainly been gaps in the history of any trading asset, but even Bitcoin itself in its like low, in its kind of like immature lifespan, that go unfilled for quite some time. It just because you have a gap doesn't mean that it's like a magnet for price action that's going to be, sucked up there as soon as price action opens back up again. I mean, there's a great example that I am reminded by myself to talk about from, more recently back around here. Remember when everyone was talking about the 8,500 gap? We did say that it was likely to get filled at some point. However, that some point can take a long time to occur, and this one took about 3 months. I do remember another big one back on over here. Good old Parabolic Trav was talking about this one. I think it was right here at about 7,300. In August of 2018, and or was it that one? No, sorry, it was this one running over here. It was the June 2018 gap, and it was so fucking perfect because the arrogance that comes through was saying like, guys, we had a gap there, so we're gonna pop back up and then move on right through it. Well, first off, the next test is usually fucking sell, but more importantly, this one again goes about 3 months or so, about a month and a half or so without getting filled. So at some point in time, yes, Bitcoin very likely will fill it. However, that some point in time can be, months away. And looking at this price action right over here, I think it's pretty damn clear that it likely will be some form away. And I wouldn't be looking at it, anytime soon. As always, if you are in the TA program, go check out the bonus video that was added about 2 months ago. I think it was 2 or 3 months ago on gap theory and gap trading analysis. So that will go into much more detail there on on the actual strategy, and as it stands right now, I wouldn't look for this to be filled anytime soon. And more importantly, as long as Bitcoin's below, especially about 8,450ish region, I don't even think like it's on the table. In fact, like not even talking about a medium time frame bounce here, essentially. So as it stands right now, we do see that we actually don't have the same sort of potential bullish divergence being formed on 12-hour CMEs. So I would say that is a little bit less. So I'd say that my earlier insinuation that perhaps we do create some bullish divergence on a 12-hour on spot is unlikely to be right. What's more likely is that we're gonna see Bitcoin probably swipe the lows again, and then if you start to see divergence put it on like a 4-hour, that would be good enough for like a short-term bounce, maybe back up to like the low 8,000s. But for right now, still well and far away, and the trend is very obviously down, and that's really not all that even helpful to anyone out there, because you fucking already know that, of course. Anyways, I'm curious, do we have bullish divergence forming on any time frame as it is right now? Yes, we do have a little bit on an hourly, but that's not going to usually be enough. Even the hourly jewel is starting to get way down there, but that's not necessarily a buy signal in and of itself. And I also don't really care about the hourly to begin with. Looking at the 2-hour, there will very likely be bullish divergence being forming, but technically it's not in there right now, and that means that the 3 hours is very unlikely to have it as well. And so I would imagine that every other time frame above that is not going to have it. So I'm going to be wrong about that. If I am looking for the 12-hour to form some divergence, I would much rather see it form on all the time frames lower than that first, and then that'll further confirm the efficacy of a 12-hour signal for bullish divergence. So for now, still looking for more downside actually, and I do believe that probably around the time that traditional markets open up, hey, Jesus Christ, probably around the time that traditional markets open back up is the time that we will see another try. And let's actually mark off these areas now, because there are some new areas to be aware of, or actually no, not really. Still our same areas working pretty damn well here. So Obviously, Bitcoin broke below that 85.50ish region right around here. That initiated the next move to 81.50ish region. Did get a $200 bounce from that region. Also, the 618 Fibonacci retracement. If I do pull all the way back out, running over here, yes, indeed. So I would be looking for that to be a nice, strong resistance back on the way up, and that is already been tested as early as this morning. Remember, it's not just the blue box territory coming in from our breakout of early January of 2020. This current year. It's also the 618 Fibonacci retracement and the 377 exponential moving average on the daily, which is all very, 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 very important and powerful. Not only that, but this is all coming along the side of the daily jewel starting to show some more downside pressure here once again. If you do have the jewel and you see the light blue start to really curl aggressively back down, that's going to be another good signal that we are going to be heading lower, probably back down to like the mid to low 7,000s. Let's say somewhere back around in this region, right around here, and Bitcoin's going to get stuck in the mud. Now, I do want to differentiate myself from the super doom boys who are talking about like a $2,000 target or a $4,000 target or a $5,000 target. I'm not saying that cannot happen. I want to first preface this statement by saying that I'm not saying that cannot happen, but I would be taking things level by level here. While I do think that Bitcoin comes down to this level theoretically should be relatively difficult for Bitcoin to, or it should be relatively difficult for Bitcoin to work its way through. That doesn't mean that it can't do it, but until we get a weekly doodle close below, let's call it like 7,000, or we could call it like 7,100. I wouldn't be looking for a major move down into like the 5,000s or 4,000 or anything like that. That also means that if Bitcoin does break $7,000 region, or let's call it 7,100 because that is a little bit more accurate here, I would be looking actually down towards the mid 5,000s, which is going to be around the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average, I do believe. Yes, indeed it is. In fact, the 200 exponential moving average works its way all the way up to almost 6,000 now. 200 simple, right around 5,500. So I don't think that Bitcoin's going to actually stop its way in the 6,000s. I mean, short term, of course, there's going to be ebbs and flows within that region. But if Bitcoin breaks 7,100, I think that Bitcoin will see the mid 5,000s at the very least, and then we can talk about perhaps lower than that if and when the time comes. But I'd still take things level by level, just like I don't want to be a super MoonBoy over here talking about Bitcoin to a fucking $250,000 because hedge, and just like I also don't want to talk about super doom targets until we actually break this region. It's very reminiscent, however, of what Bitcoin did in 2018, when you do see that it kind of got stuck in the muddy territory right around $6,000 region. I'd look at that muddy territory as about the $7,000 region right on over here. With a pretty damn nasty fake out along the whole way. So yeah, that's essentially what I'm thinking about on the higher term timeframes here. I would look for traditional markets to set the tone. When traditional markets bottom out, I'd be looking for a bottom in Bitcoin. And looking at traditional markets right on over here, we're probably going to open up on new lows, I'd imagine, especially granted what Japan did earlier today. And let me just make sure that I'm recording, and I am, and my microphone's working, so that's great. But assuming that we get that continuation, which I think is incredibly likely here, any sort of an open below the 377 at about 295.5 should be good enough for that. Then yes, I'm not saying it's necessarily going to happen today or tomorrow or the next day, but overall I do think that traditional market's probably going to come down to like the 275 region at the very least. I think that that's a potential bottoming area, similar to like Bitcoin in the mid to low sevens, and if lower, I'd be looking at the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average, another $10 lower than that at 265. I do think that traditional markets, however, are closer to bottoming than not. The reason why I say that is because historical volatility percentile is at an outlier area. We are printing red right on over here, and every time that we do print red, we're getting pretty damn close. So things are pretty damn hot here. But likely has a little bit lower to go, and then I'd be looking for some bottoming action. So does that mean that we're heading into like a major, recession or anything like that? No, I still don't really think so. But if Bitcoin, but if traditional markets essentially breaks like, 265, yes, we can talk about that. That's your global financial meltdown. And at the current moment in time, I don't think that that's going to do well for Bitcoin. We've spoken about this like ad fucking length. So I don't want to get too deep into it right now. I do have a Twitter thread, which you are more than welcome to view, on my thoughts and analysis on why Bitcoin and traditional markets is related to each other. But the way, generally the way that I think of it, to kind of like put it into perspective is how like an altcoin, for the most part, not all of them, of course, Link being the exception, but for the most part, most altcoins are like a more emotional version of Bitcoin in the way that they move, meaning that if Bitcoin moves to the upside, they usually move to the upside as well, and usually, in some cases even more, they're more emotional. And when Bitcoin moves to the downside, they usually get dumped on a little bit more. Well, I look at Bitcoin as an altcoin to the traditional markets. So whatever direction that traditional markets are taking for the long-term macro, Bitcoin is likely to follow that in a more emotional aspect. So again, I guess I'll just briefly go over God, no, I don't want to do it right now. Go check out the Twitter thread. We can show the correlations pretty damn well, and I think that this last move really hammers that one in. I mean, shit, man, even the last 2 weeks should be pretty fucking obvious. You don't need any sort of correlation coefficients. You don't need any sort of R squared. You don't need any sort of covariance. You don't need any sort of p values. You don't need anything other than this. if you are not using the Bitcoin fucking blinders, you can say, all right, last couple weeks in traditional markets down 20%, topping out right in over there. What do we see in Bitcoin over the last couple weeks since this last high? Oh my God, what a hedge! What a fucking hedge! 26 fucking percent down, and Bitcoin Bula's getting skeeted on all the way fucking through. You know what it sounds like? This is a dramatica reenactment of all of the Bitcoin hodlers in the last 24 hours.
Oh God! Oh God! Come get it! Come get it! Oh! 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 Oh!
Carl, I told you to turn off the fucking video, and
When
hedge,
like hedge, when
I would like to
hedge,
fucking know.
hedge, when hedge.
When hedge. When hedge.
All right, so let's go look at what potentially an actual hedge could be doing in gold. Oh, nice. Continuation of the upside. $1,700 hit. I do believe I have a target a little bit higher than that, 1750 to 1780-ish still on the board, and I do believe that is going to be working its way towards there. This is what an actual hedge would be looking like. And I'm not a gold fan. I don't hold any gold. I don't care to hold any gold. I think it's actually kind of silly, but when the world needs a hedge, gold is typically that one until the world actually needs a hedge during a real financial meltdown. The actual hedge is a fucking short position. Case in point, 2008, right on over here. What do we see happen to gold in 2008? Our beautiful hedge, 34% down. So pretty much, the same as, as regular markets. So that also tells me that, are traditional markets actually going into a full-on economic collapse right now? Probably not, because you would not expect gold to be doing something like this. People are going to be cashing out everything in an actual global financial meltdown because everything is fucked at that point. There is no winner. This is the true message that I want to have. If you are rooting for the global financial meltdown because you think that is going to benefit your orange coins or some shit like that, you are an asshole. You are a fucking asshole because it's actually, one, not going to benefit you, and two, you don't want that to happen because that means that everyone else is going to be fucked who doesn't have these orange coins. So it's really only like 5 of us who have these orange coins at this point. And for all 5 of us, it ain't gonna fucking help. It ain't gonna fucking help. The age-old saying goes, a rising tide lifts all ships, and this is indeed not the kind of tide that you want to be riding if an actual economic collapse happened. And even to that point, even if Bitcoin were to act as an economic hedge towards the financial collapse, you don't want to be the one fucking rich person in a world of only poor people walking down the street, do you? Case in point, go look at a lot of countries in South America. Well, I don't know about a lot of countries in South America, but when you have extremes, when you have extreme poverty and then extreme riches, it ain't going to be too fucking fun to be the one person who's rich because, well, you're going to be, good luck going outside at that point. So again, it's one of those things that, really ticks me off long term because I've actually been that person I've been on both ends of the spectrum, but I can tell you this, when you're on the very, very poor end of the spectrum, you wouldn't wish that on anyone else. It doesn't feel fucking good, and I can say that from experience. It's not fucking fun. It's not fucking fun is an understatement. It feels like someone has their foot on your face, and you can barely get out of bed every day because you're actually depressed and for good reason. Anyways, Anyways, looking at Bitcoin right here, let's start to maybe wrap this up, or actually perhaps before we wrap this up, let's go look at some of the major amazing altcoins right over here. See how they're doing, see how they're holding up during this hedge time. We do see that Mr. Butyrol popping back up. I do believe it might have a little bit more here, up to like 210-ish region, but overall, as long as it's below about 212 on a daily closing basis, or especially 215 on a daily closing basis, the direction is down, as we've been saying. And remember, the hidden bearish divergence call that that we had this 2 weeks ago, right around here, I still stick with what I've been saying. In fact, Mr. Butyrol even, oh my God, almost closed below the 10 symbol right here. I'd still stick with what I said overall. I do think that long term, these actually are fine. I'm not like super long-term bearish looking for a new lower low than like 130-ish dollar region right here. I think that we're going to do something like this, and we're probably going to test the lower end of this region, somewhere right around like 150, 160-ish region. And it's going to take its time. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, or a lot of the time I say that, and then it does happen today or tomorrow, and then I feel really fucking silly for that. I don't have any way to do time analysis, and I don't really care about time analysis. I only care about levels because, well, they're just the most easy thing to, well, not easy, but they are the most relatable and documentable thing to be using as a trading piece of edge. So anyways, looking at this right over here, hidden bearish divergence likely going to bring us back down to the low side of the range. Not only that, but momentum also is turning down at the same time from the same area that has called a lot of major tops in the past, of which you might remember January 2018 right here at $900. Would have been a great sell. More recently, right around here in June 2019, $350 and down all the way. And then more recently, right around here, and once again, kind of testing this, this resistance cluster as we put in some hidden bearish divergence between this point and this point, back below the exponential, back into the neutral zone as well, and testing some major moving averages, which don't look all that healthy. I do think that overall it's probably going to find its way back down to like 160 to 150, and that's going to be the next like medium time frame to higher time frame bounce region. And we see a very, very similar setup on Mrs. Litecoin. But before we get there, I do want to go back down. Yeah, next short-term, medium-term support would be 180-ish region. If this one does want to break down further in the interim, but again, as always, whatever Bitcoin does, this one's going to follow death cross incoming on the 4 hour, so it's going to $0, $0.0. No, just kidding. But we actually are working on some bullish divergence here, so. Yeah, that 212 area might get tested, but as long as it's especially even closing like 4 hour dildos below 212, I don't think that you're going to see any sort of like major or there's really not like a major reversal to be speaking about right around here. Although this one, again, very, 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 very hot on the lower term time frame. So it is looking like lower term time frames want to bounce a little bit. The higher term time frames though still got plenty of room to go. 12 hour Stokes, freshly down, love it, absolutely fucking love it. Let's go check out Mrs. Litecoin. Remember, Mrs. Litecoin, very, very similar. Doesn't this look similar? In fact, Mrs. Litecoin already testing this trend line here, so that's not good because you'd expect that it would take its time and not do that. Maybe it glides its way sideways and allows the momentum oscillators to kind of reset themselves. This is exactly what we spoke about over the last couple weeks. The problem is that, again, I was saying it probably happened, this area probably gets tested in like the next, I don't know, like month or two or something like that. Nope, happens in the next week. So nice one. But same setup here. I do think that long term it's probably okay. Looks to me like as long as it holds this trend line, I would look at this as reaccumulation over the macro, but this one testing the bottom side trend line of this so quickly in comparison to Bitcoin and Mr. Butyrol, for example, would imply that it is relatively weak. We see the same sort of setup on momentum oscillators. We see weekly Stokes crossing down, same area that's called a lot of tops before, a lot of major tops like this one, right in over here, like the old time tops thus far at about above $300, and once again happening at a lower high on the macro scale. The question is though, is that should we be expecting lower right now? I don't. This one's going to try to bounce a little bit. You know what? I do think that the general market's most likely going to bounce a little bit here. Maybe Litecoin back up to like $55 region, but as long as this one's below the 200 simple, I'm not bullish in any way, shape, or form. And this one's about to get a death cross on the daily once again. So where does it likely grind out if Bitcoin works its way down to like the mid to low 7,000s, probably to like the mid to low $40 region. And again, I would actually be looking at this at least on the first pass as likely an opportunity long term. It's not until we destroy this last local low, which on a weekly closing basis, I believe would be right here at about $41.50. that I wouldn't get like too long-term bearish until that happens. But of course, short-term, yes, absolutely. Medium-term, yes, absolutely. Long-term, even, it's even long-term, it's not that I'm bullish here. I think at best it can kind of grind this area out and then pick itself up. So sideways, as long as it does not break below like $41 as we said on a weekly closing basis is fine. If it does start to break that area, then yes, I would be looking for, back down to between 25 and $30. It's not going to be good. Let's go see what the other market coins are doing here. We see Mr. Ripple's nipples. Oh no, my ripples, my fucking rippled nipples. What do we see here? Weekly stocks getting rejected in the same fucking area that calls all these goddamn tops. Holy shit, man, can it be that simple sometimes? Sometimes it actually can be. Weekly RSI, we don't even have do we have hidden bearish divergence? Oh yeah, we have massive hidden bearish divergence between here and here. We did call a move back down to about 20%, sorry, 20%. Bad slip of the tongue there, 20 cents yesterday. I do think that it's probably going to try to bounce this region a little bit more. I don't think that it's done just yet, but I would be looking for severe resistance around like 22.5 cent region. We're going to see momentum oscillators turn down in all the same fashion, and weekly RSI is once again deep inside the bearish control zone, well below the exponential as well. I feel like today I'm coming off as like very arrogant and probably in your face, and for a lot of people out there, I imagine that's probably going to be really annoying. I do want to explain myself for a second here. All jokes aside, I never really intend anyone like bad harm because, well, I like I said, I know what it's like to actually be in some not so nice economic situations, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But what I do like to poke a little bit of fun at is all of the people who have been invading my inbox and invading my fucking comment section, saying some some incendiary things, trying to always get under my skin, and well, I just let the price action speak for what it is. So, the answer to the question, when hedge, well, unless you're looking at a fucking inverted chart versus a regular chart, not anytime soon. Doesn't mean that it can't change in the future, but for right now, I don't really see it. And Mr. Ripple's nipples is no different. Now, I would say, if 19.5 cents breaks on like a weekly closing basis, let's nail it down to a daily though, because we won't be closing a weekly anytime soon. On a daily, that same area would be about 18.5 cents. That's gonna be the next big washout, probably all the way back down to the mid-teens, like 14.5 to 15 cents area overall. I do believe, or I don't even have a trend line in there because it's so far away, but would be somewhere in this region right around here. Let's actually mark off the weekly lows right here. And of course, just at the end of the day, the most simple of simple structures here, lower highs and lower lows on the weekly. The macro direction is down. It is fucking bearish, and until we get an uptrend on the weekly, I wouldn't make excuses for it. What else do we want to look at? Maybe I'm just curious how like the general market's doing. Oh, stellar, no, stellar, not stellar. Weekly death cross coming alongside the whole weekly downtrend ever since fucking 2018 January. Next major area I'd be looking for on this one, if it does break below the current lows, somewhere down around the 2.5 cent region, looks pretty god awful. Same thing going on here. It's basically the same chart as Ripple, but a little bit weaker, I suppose. What about Monero? Monero, usually the darling of the market, as a lot of people like it, and for good reason. It is kind of cool, and we see something similar to Mrs. Litecoin and to Mrs. Litecoin and to Mrs. Litecoin and Mr. Buterol. Can't even get my own words out properly today, but something like this is what I'd be looking towards. Something like this. So I do think that we're probably going to, ultimately come back down and test around $48.5. And then long term, as long as that does hold, I actually do look at this as more or less okay, more or less healthy long term. Healthy is a relative term. Sorry, this is not fucking healthy at all, but I would be looking at it as a major opportunity long term. Now we will be in the midst of perhaps getting a weekly death cross along the way. If that happens, that would certainly make me revisit those thoughts. But for right now, this one kind of following the general market, and I do think that it's pretty much already tested that region. Let's see if we go down to a lower term time frame. Is there anything else of note here? Yeah, same thing on this one. I'm basically bearish on just about every asset in this market as long as it's below the 200 simple. Just it's like a general rule. Doesn't mean that we can't pop back up and even retake it or test it, but until that happens, there's no real talks of like a reversal as far as the higher time frames go. It's just not relevant at all. Let's see, what are the other market leaders looking like? What about EOS? EOS looking like absolute dog shit right over here. Do you think that we kind of have a similar chart going on longer term? Indeed, what do you know? It's the same fucking thing wherever you look. Something like this. is what I'd be looking towards. This one kind of making more of a pennant shape as far as the macro goes. Hold on. I think that I could readjust this one. This one I do not trust as much as perhaps this. But same thing going on right over here. Most likely going to test the downside of this, $2.50. But I would look at that as, as potentially a massive opportunity longer term. So I do want to separate myself again from the MoonBoys and the Doomboys. I'm looking for an ebb and flow in this market. I'm looking for the market to really slow down in this region here as well. What about Neo? What's Neo doing? Same, basically the same fucking chart as always. I mean, goddamn, man. What do you see right here? It's another potential triangle forming on the macro. Again, not the picture of health and fitness in any way, shape, or form. I don't really care for Neo, but breaking all major moving averages on the weekly right here, probably ultimately going to reach down towards about $8.50. Not good. Looking at it daily, it is holding on to the 200 simple. So, let's start to nail this down a little bit, because now that I look around the general market, I do think that the general market is going to bounce here on the lower term time frames. Question is, how high does this bounce get? And I'll just be going level by level on Bitcoin right now. Tron, what's Tron doing? 1.5 cent, actually a little bit different than the other ones, but this one's just been down the whole way. Justin Sun, explain this. I mean, this is just nasty right here. This is just fucking nasty. Something like this going on. It's like a descending triangle on the macro. I don't think that this actually operates like a descending triangle, to be clear, but it certainly is not the best chart of all time either. What about I don't know, BNB? Do we want to check out BNB? Holding on to macro support right now, probably does bounce a little bit here. Maybe bounces all the way back up to $18.50, but as long as it's below there, not looking all that hot, and probably does reach down towards our lower echelons at $15. I do want to check out Link. What's Link done during this? Our darling of the market. How is it held up? And there you fucking go. There's your goddamn hedge. Link and gold. Link and gold are your hedges right now. Now, this is Link versus Bitcoin, so it's not necessarily fair, but this is what you'd expect to see on an actual hedge when traditional markets are showing massive downside. After basically like a 15% move plus more, and in all markets and across the world are getting plummeted right now. Another 5% down to start off this week. This one rallying up in comparison too. And as we said, coming onto the weekly, as long as this one closed the weekly above, what was it, like, I don't know, 45,000 satoshis, I'd be looking for, or sorry, no, it was 47,000 satoshis. I'd be looking for another try higher, and I'm just generally bullish on this one still. I don't see any real issues with it. It's been very constructive, very powerful, and all momentum oscillators are showing that we probably have some more to go. So I'd be saying it's going to very likely retest the prior highs and probably more over time. I don't have any sort of price targets for it. I'd be generally bullish on it, especially as long as it remains above this pivot right here at about 48,000 satoshis. If it breaks that one, it's not all said and done. This one's not really done in my opinion, and as long as it's above about 37,000 satoshis long term. So I'd just be generally bullish on it. It's kind of in a blue sky breakout, and there's not really too much to be done there as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking at euro dollar right now. That one's looking damn good. Let's go check out how Japan did today. Down 5%, and let's see where is it kind of reaching towards as far as the macro goes. There it is. So it actually has broken officially the 200 simple and 200 exponential moving average right on over here. We are seeing the same sort of historical volatility percentile reading that we see on SPY, the major bourse for traditional markets in the U.S. And we're basically reaching down towards the January 2019 lows now, or December 2018 lows right here. So I do want to compare that. And I'm sure that you might also remember this as well. This was a little bit more than a year ago, and I believe it was right here. Yeah, it was right here on these lows. So is traditional markets likely to work its way lower? Yes, I do kind of stick with what I've been saying. Probably somewhere in this region here, which is going to be akin to the 200 simple, 200 exponential moving average. I mean, yes, we do have the 377 looming much lower, but I wouldn't really call like economic failure I mean, this is bad. This is pretty fucking bad. Call it what you want to call it. You can call this an economic collapse, and I wouldn't disagree with you. I mean, it kind of is. But overall, as long as we hold this low, I wouldn't be like super concerned for a very prolonged down market, much lower, like another fucking $100 or whatever it might be. So we'll get to that bridge when we cross it, or however the saying goes. And again, I do think more downside here, of course, but I'd really be looking for potential bottoming at the 275 level, although that's going to be unlikely, I think, long term. And 265, I think is going to be a good chance. Anyway, speaking of chance, let's go back into the charts right over here. It's already been 40 minutes long, but I do want to match things up. Now as we go, I haven't even really spoken about the lower time frames all that much. So it actually does look like a lot of the alts do want to bounce a little bit here. And you know, Bitcoin coming back down and testing our breakout from what was this early January of 2020 of this year. You know, should probably bounce it a little bit on the short-term time frame. So I do think that Bitcoin isn't necessarily acting like super strong here or anything like that. I do think that it probably comes back down and grinds this area a little bit, maybe alongside the open of New York Stock Exchange, and then I'd probably be looking for it to not break today and put in some divergence plays right around here. This is again about 7750 to 7800ish region, and then I'd look for a range to be formed between about, you know, that level at again about 7750 all the way up here to this blue box right around 8150ish region. 8150 now becomes a pretty massive pivot point. I would say that it would correlate with the medium time frames. If Bitcoin can get back above 8150, which I don't think is very likely right now, or of course over time, yes, I am a long-term bull on Bitcoin, but not anytime soon. You know, then I'd target move back up towards 8550, 8600 region right on over here. But for right now, let's see how that matches up with the expected moves chart with regards to historical volatility percentile. And this is on a 4-hour right now, so it's not going to be all that helpful, but it would be suggesting that it's going to be pretty unlikely that we do break to new lows in this next 4 hours worth of period, which is going to correlate with the next 12-hour dildo closing. So it doesn't really help all that much, but just kind of showing that I don't really think that we're going to continue the low time frame trend to the downside right here. I think that we're probably going to put in a local low and bounce back up. Let's go see what the 12-hour looks like, because this one's been pretty damn accurate, and we do see a lot of interesting things right here. So we do see that the true and simple on the 12-hour is actually going to act as a pretty damn good pivot point as well, right around 8400ish region, which should be rising over time. Or sorry, not rising. It should actually level out here as we are heading or as we are hanging out below it. But more importantly, it would say that that it's very unlikely that we move our way back up above there today. In fact, even the top side of the first deviation, which is heavily angled to the downside, is coming in right around 8150ish region. So I would look for 8150 to be that next sort of medium time frame pivot. As long as Bitcoin's below there, I think that we can bounce back up. We can even retest it. You know, officially that's fine. But as long as we're operating below there, the direction's down, and I don't think that Bitcoin really finds like a nice actionable low for potentially a long-term play. Of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor until, you know, until we test like the mid to low 7,000s, probably around like 7,100, I'd imagine. And it's also suggesting that by the same token, to the downside, yeah, a little bit unlikely that we do break to new lows today. It would be less than 2.5% chance that as it is below the second standard deviation right here. Let's go check out what the daily is looking like right here as well. Daily getting the range pretty damn well, and I do think that the daily is pretty much the same, saying very similar things to the 12-hour. First standard deviation to the upside, a little bit above 8150. It's currently at 8200. That's also directly in line with the 377 exponential moving average. So less than a 16% chance we move back up there today, or sorry, close above there today. Can certainly test it. That's fine. I think that Bitcoin is gonna mount a little bit of a bounce here, but as long as we're below there, you know, I'd look for that test to be sold into, and we're ultimately going to head lower. And by the same token, first deviation to the downside, suggesting that less than 16% chance that we actually do continue below our current lows today. So most likely the low for today is in. We might come back down and retest there, but ultimately I'd be looking for some divergence plays to be had on the lower term timeframes, and then a nice bouncy bounce into the the low 8,000s. And as long as 8150 is not overtaken by the bulls, I'd be looking for that to be sold into and continue on down into the lower 7,000s as it is right now. So I do feel like this analysis has been a little bit all over the place today. I apologize about that. I just got back in from a nice weekend away in a town that's unknown in Finland. It's like in the middle of fucking nowhere, and it looks like Russia, but it was actually quite fun. And it was kind of like a much needed reprieve on my own behalf, because I don't know, every once in a while it's good for the soul to go out for a long night. But coming back to this is pretty fucking it's pretty damn good as a trader. As you know, as a long-term hodler, I do understand that this does put a lot of pain on people. I never want to make light of that. Like I said, it's I know that those situations are not fun at all. But as a trader, this is opportunity time, and I do believe that there's gonna be a lot of fun times to be had in this next month or two of trading. So with that said, let's go back down to the lower term timeframes, kind of wrap up these regions here. And what I'd be saying is, as long as Bitcoin's below 8150, still do think that we ultimately going to head down on the medium term timeframes. However, lower term timeframes, probably, I think probably do come back down and swipe around 7,800-ish region, 7,750-ish region, but I'd be looking for something resembling bullish divergence put on there on like our 4-hour to 1-hour timeframes, all of which are not showing bullish divergence right now, but are going to be building if Bitcoin does essentially test this area again and doesn't break it essentially. So if Bitcoin can do that, I would look for, I would look for this area to bounce it and probably head back up, maybe even test officially back around 8,100, 8,150-ish region. That's going to be the next big test, and my medium time frame outlook would be bearish as long as we're below this region right around here. And once again, we can actually move down the point of reference for having a, well, I was going to say from switching from bearish buys to bullish buys, but I don't know if that's appropriate. Right now it's at 9,200-ish region. That's good. That's the obvious area. I was going to say perhaps you could move it all the way down here towards this last breakdown area, right around 8,550, 8,600-ish region. I do think that would be a little bit too aggressive, and right now there's no real rush. Like over here, it would have been a rush because it would have had major implications with how the weekly looks. This area, not necessarily the same. For right now, I don't think that the higher time frames are reversing anytime soon. So I don't think that's appropriate to be a little bit more aggressive. So I'd still be playing ranges anyways. To wrap it up, 8,150 the upside. If we do break that, I would be looking for another $400, $500 move to like 8,550, 8,600-ish region. Bitcoin would get back above there. Things actually look a lot better, to be fair. I don't think that that's what's happening here, and probabilities would say it's very unlikely to happen. By the same token, I don't necessarily think that Bitcoin's ready to break below 7,750 just yet. I think that we're going to play out a range between these two guys right here, and then ultimately come down for a test into the lower levels of the $7,000 region between, like, let's just call it 7,100, give or take a few bucks. So with that said, this video has already been 45 minutes long. I want to wish you a happy and healthy start to your week on this Monday. I will be on Twitch later today. I forgot to talk about a discount coming up for the 2-year anniversary of this cave, but it will be on the 2-year anniversary of this cave, which is in 3 days. 3 days on the 12th. Let me just make sure what day that is. Thursday. Yeah, Thursday. So there you go. So yeah, if you're considering, investing in any one of the programs, just hold off for a few more days. It'll be significantly cheaper, and there you go. You can save some money. And for all the other people who don't care to ever to ever do that, fair enough. I'm always going to post these videos for free anyway. So go ahead and do whatever suits you best. Okay, cool. Anyways, I think that's it for now. I will be on Twitch later today, like I said, assuming that game servers are not down, which you never know, but I think that they should be up today. And with that said, take care, and until next time.